Davos 2014, is the global economy flying high? In the interview, Lufthansa chairman Christoph Franz.
Mr. Franz, what's the chief of Lufthansa, Europe's biggest aviation group, doing here in Davos?
I've been a regular guest for many years at Davos. It's an event where the business community can meet with many political leaders and non-governmental organizations at the start of the year and do some brainstorming about how we're going to rise to the coming year's challenges, what the problems and priorities are. I find it very stimulating, and you get a good feeling for what you can expect for your business.
What are the urgent problems in your view?
I think we have to make some distinctions. In the world of business, we can expect the global economy to perform better in 2014 than it did last year. That will certainly include Europe as well, not with any outstanding growth, but stronger than last year. But we also discuss political topics here, the conflicts in various countries and regions, and promoting human rights. How can we fight hunger in many parts of the world? What role can politicians play, and how can the business community contribute?
Inequality between rich and poor, is that a topic you're hearing?
Yes, that's playing an important part here because the wealth of this world is distributed very unequally. People are discussing whether the time has come to redistribute that wealth. Or should this be more about those people who are not taking part in prosperity? How can we help make them part of the system so that they can join in the prosperity in the future?
How can that be done?
For instance, through approaches like microcredits in many countries where people have their own very small business and therefore don't depend on handouts. Of course, there are also topics relevant to the issue like promoting health. Also, how can we stop natural resources from being misused and, within a few decades, from being depleted by the developed economies, leaving nothing for other countries? Those issues interest us all here.
Another topic is the state of the global economy. Last year was hardly a bonanza, especially in the emerging markets. How has that affected business for Lufthansa?
I think we have to distinguish again. Regarding the developments we're seeing in Asia, you're absolutely right. The double-digit growth rates of the past have vanished. We're seeing very soft monetary policy there, especially in Japan and India. But also China has been growing more slowly, and that affects us. Lufthansa simply moved fewer passengers and less air cargo. We hope that we'll be observing a recovery there in 2014, and we're seeing signs of that now. But in South America, also an emerging market, we saw strong growth last year.
And how's Germany looking?
In Germany, we expect demand to grow more than it did last year, by about 1%. It will still be the growth engine for Europe, but altogether as a continent, Europe is an area of weak growth, and essentially that won't change much in 2014.
How does a company position itself for that?
For our company, that means, of course, that we won't increase supply in weak markets. We want our planes to be fuller and not emptier. We've been pursuing a modest development. We're not putting any additional planes into service. We're only replacing old ones. That's what we did in 2013, and that won't change this year. That means if we expand services, it'll be because we're better utilizing our present fleet by flying the planes we have more frequently, because we make full seats out of empty ones and improve our capacity. Those are the instruments that'll stay the same.
The founder of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, said recently that today's executives think too short-term. What do you think? Does short-term thinking govern the actions of managers, yourself included?
I hesitate to make such sweeping statements because I believe that different industries work differently. We have many sectors where actions are very long-term in scope. I work in a sector in which Lufthansa made a huge investment last year, probably the biggest by a private German company, more than 10 billion euros. But those aircraft deliveries will only start in 3 to 4 years and will then be delivered over a 10-year period and will be flown for a quarter of a century. So we don't make these decisions for ourselves, but for the next generation to carry responsibility for a company. You also observe that in other industries that have long lead-up times. We are compelled not to think of the next quarter, but many years into the future. And then the view is a very different one.
Still, you're subject to pressure from shareholders, and they want Lufthansa to earn money.
That's absolutely true. We're a publicly traded, for-profit company. But you still have to keep signaling to shareholders that you can't concentrate solely on results for the coming quarter. We have to find that balance between short-term results and securing long-term success. In any given year, that might be done on the backs of shareholders, say if we don't raise the dividend, or even cut it. But perhaps doing so will secure our success 3 or 5 years down the road.
You've said that competition in the aviation sector is unfair. What do you mean by that?
I mean that the players in the market have very different structures. In Europe and America, private companies dominate, which also privatizes risk. But in Asia and the Middle East, you have many airlines that are state-owned. Their mission is not only to be successful in their sector. These countries see their airlines as a motor for the country's economic development. So they support these companies and try to establish ideal conditions for them.
Meaning the airlines are subsidized, and so is airport construction.
Exactly. Huge amounts of capacity are put at their disposal, ensuring that these companies have excellent infrastructure and no night flying restrictions. They create a business environment that goes as far as banning trade unions or maybe not paying social welfare contributions. But these players are in the same market and vie for the favor of the same passengers as we do, and that's very unfair. We have to make sure we get comparable conditions.
But what's the effect of that? You can't compete on that level. The passenger aviation industry in Europe isn't subsidized like that, at least not Lufthansa and other airlines.
It's certainly a challenge for these companies, and I think there's no single easy solution. On the other hand, we have very well-trained workers. We have a modern fleet, a first-class product, and we offer great service. Our customers are loyal. They're always glad to be greeted on board in their native language. What can't be replaced is our excellent network that flies our customers throughout Europe and connects them with our home markets and the world. And that's non-stop, not through other hubs elsewhere in the world.
And will the Lufthansa Group have the same dimensions 10 years from now?
Certainly.
Another topic here in Davos is climate change. What can a company like yours do to fight it? Aviation is a lightning rod for criticism in that respect, given its CO2 emissions.
Yes, aeroplanes emit CO2 just like cars do. That means, like other kinds of transportation, we have an environmental responsibility. We can't negate it. We have to confront it actively. That's actually a long tradition at Lufthansa. For example, we succeeded in reducing our specific fuel consumption, that's the number of litres per 100 passengers, by 40% since 1990. That shows that we're on the right path. Also, we've massively reduced aircraft noise. We fly more, but each individual flight has become substantially quieter. Personally, I know, because I'm allowed to peek into the developers' workshops, that this process will continue. In the coming years, we're going to make big strides and do even more justice to our environmental responsibility than we do today.
So there's such a thing as flying green.
I'm convinced of that, yes. That must be our goal. And global aviation is the only worldwide industry that set itself concrete targets, namely to make the growth of our industry CO2 neutral by the year 2020. That's a great challenge, but also a clear commitment. The second milestone is to cut the absolute fuel consumption we had in 2005 in half by 2050. That means that as a growth industry, we cut emissions, period. And we're conducting research, trying different solutions on how to do it. And we're making great progress. A year and a half ago, Lufthansa conducted the first test worldwide on whether biojet fuel could be used in existing aircraft, and it worked just fine.
But don't passengers care mainly about the cheapest price? Isn't that a problem for you?
It's true that customers are only willing to pay a limited amount. That's why it is essential for us to roll out new kinds of fuel at market prices, for example. And I'm convinced that's possible. People have always demonstrated that through innovation. They're able to rise to challenges they themselves created. I'm convinced we will succeed in that.
Thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you.